This is Keith Matheny. It's May 29th, 2021. It's Memorial Day weekend. And what's your name?
Bob Matheny,
And how old are you?
88.
How did you come to be in the Army for Korea?
I enlisted when I was 17.
How were you able to do that?
My mom and dad signed for me.
Why did you want to do it?
I watched John Wayne movies and I wanted to be like John Wayne.
How did your mom and dad feel about you doing that at such a
Well,
young
they didn't
age?
like me going to Korea, but they didn't have no choice.
Did you make my grandma cry, your mom?
She probably did.
Where did you go for basic training?
Camp Atterbury, Indiana.
September 1950?
September the 26th is when I went in, and it was basic. No, it had to have been January because I got a 30-day leave and I got to Korea in March.
What was basic training like? What were you doing every day?
Learning how to be a grunt.
You'd wake up in the morning and tell me about a day as a trainee.
Oh, you woke up early, and you do calisthenics first, and then you do some sort of training. And the end of it, you have to crawl for about 100, 200 feet with machine gun bullets 6 inches above your head, firing machine guns, stationary machine guns firing 6 inches above your head.
Had you ever fired a rifle before joining?
Never. Well, at 22, I had a 22 as a kid, but not any bigger.
Okay. Was there a big learning curve there for that, or did you take to it pretty
No,
naturally?
you had to learn how to take them apart and clean them.
And all of that came to you pretty easily?
Yeah. Yeah, they're not hard to take apart and put together.
Was it hard for you to shoot and be accurate, or were you hitting the targets?
Oh, no, I wasn't a sharpshooter, but I passed.
So how did you get over there, I imagine, on a boat?
On the Marine Adder was the name of the ship, and she's still sailing. It's got a different name now, but it's still sailing.
And how many people would that fit? Thousands?
There's probably 2,000 on it.
And how long was that boat ride?
14 days.
Where did you board?
In Washington.
How did you get there? Did you drive cross country in a
train.
bus? A train. Okay. What do you remember about the boat ride over, if anything?
I remember people, I never got seasick, but when you would walk around, especially at lunchtime, and see people with bags full of their bile, and it almost makes you get some yourself. We got there the first part of March. On basic training, I was on a 60 millimeter mortar. So when I got to Korea, they put me on a mortar, but it was an 81.
You were 2nd Infantry.
38th Regiment, 2nd M Company, 38th Regiment, 2nd Division. We landed closer to Incheon.
Okay.
We was below the 38th parallel in March. Yeah, everybody was pushed back to Busan. They got ready to blow the docks, and then they started pushing them back north.
So you became the Reserve Corps for the 1st Marine Division, right? The 38th Regiment?
Yeah, when we went online, we would relieve them, and then we would go back for 2 or 3 weeks, and then they would come back and relieve us. The mortar made sure that the riflemen, when they got to the hill, we took care of a third of the enemy for them.
So they were dug in. They were dug in pretty good,
yeah,
right?
We provided cover for the infantry.
How many were in the mortar crews?
There was about 10 in each squad, and there was four squads, and there was 4 mortars in our platoon.
So what does each person do?
We had the number one, number two, and number three gunner. The number one took care of aiming. There was a scope of some kind on there with numbers on it and or azimuths on it, degrees. The one on the front line that called it in, he would call in and tell them which way to go. And then he would get the gun set, and the number two gunner, which is what I was most of the time, the number two gunner would drop the shells in, and then they had two or three other people that would get them ammo and keep the ammo coming.
You got there around March of
Yeah,
50
sometime in March.
of 51, right?
Yeah.
What did you spend? You were there how long in combat?
I was there until the middle of January of 52.
And you were in
Not
combat pretty much all that time.
No, we would go on the line for 30 days and get relieved by the Marines. We didn't have many casualties in weapons company. The rifleman is the one that gets they're the heroes of any war, as a rifleman, and all we did was support them.
I think you told me once when you got to Korea, you never were inside of a building again for a year or something like that?
No, it was outside the whole time I was there. The only time
Or in a tent, right?
It said the building was went on R&R in Tokyo. He slept in pup tents when we was in the back. Yeah, we was behind the infantry.
Shooting over them.
Yeah.
Into the hills.
Yeah. The battle lasted for maybe a half an hour, 45 minutes. Mm-hmm. It didn't take long for the infantry to take a hill or defend a hill. I never heard of Bloody River. I never heard of Heartbreak Ridge till after I was out of the Army. We didn't have a name for the hills. They had a code name for them. We just went by how high they was. We couldn't see the battle because there was a hill between us and that hill. So the only ones that could see was the people that was actually taking the hill.
You told me a story about how the mortar crew got separated from everybody and got isolated. Do you remember what month that was?
No, I don't remember the month, but I bet it was around the time they was taking that, because the reason they went there because the Chinese had a self-propelled rocket that they couldn't hit, so we went to the rear a little bit to a different ridge, and then went in the direction of where they were, so we could get close enough to see if we could knock it out. And it was still too far for the ammo, so what they did, they put there's 9 powder bags in each round, and we added 3 powder bags to it to get the extra distance to knock out that self-propelled rocket, and they did knock it out.
Didn't you get cut off and had to stay there?
Yeah, we was cut off for 5 days.
How many people?
I think there was about 11 of us.
And what? So the Chinese got behind you? You were surrounded?
Yeah, I don't know which outfit it was ahead of us, but they was told to move out, and they moved out, and the North Koreans and Chinese came back to that hill.
You couldn't just retreat back?
No, they was in back of us, and they was in front of us, so we had to sit there for 5 days waiting. They couldn't even take the chance of dropping rations by air because the enemy would know we was there.
So you just laid low?
Yeah, we just stayed there it was lucky there was a a creek where you get drink water. I know water's not safe for some creeks, but we had to use it. After the second day, we was out of rations.
Were you scared?
Oh, hell yeah.
You're thinking the Chinese and the North Koreans are coming any
Yeah,
minute,
we
and
did.
you're going to be a
Everybody
prisoner of
was
war.
afraid of somebody, you know, that they would find us, and we were a mortar company. We had carbines and 45s, but we was no match for them burp guns and 200 enemy coming at you.
Were you thinking at any point in that time I might become a prisoner of war?
No, I wasn't thinking of prisoners, because I don't think that they don't take many prisoners.
So you radioed back, and they told you to sit tight, and that they'd get you
I
out.
don't know. We had a radio, yes. We kept in contact by radio.
And you weren't still shooting, right? Because that would have given you away too.
Yeah, no.
And so how did it come to be that you got rescued from that situation?
Well, they retook the hill.
Oh,
The infantry retook the hill, and we was able to move out.
remember how you felt that day you got rescued?
We was quiet. The probably the happiest they've been in a long time.
Were you hungry?
Oh yeah. Everybody was hungry.
The Battle of Heartbreak Ridge was a month-long battle which took place between September 13th and October 15th, 1951. After withdrawing from Bloody Ridge, the Korean People's Army set up new positions 1,500 yards away on a 7-mile-long hill mass. If anything, the defenses were even more formidable here than on Bloody Ridge. The Battle of Heartbreak Ridge was one of several major engagements in the hills of North Korea, a few miles north of the 38th parallel near Chorwan.
Most places there, you couldn't, when they got further north, you couldn't, there was no way of getting artillery there. You couldn't even get, some places you couldn't even get jeeps. It was all on foot.
What did you guys in the mortar crews do in that situation?
We carried, when you moved, you carried your, one guy carried the tube, one guy carried the bipod, and they had people, the Korean civilians, there was a lot of them there that carried ammo. Of course, you couldn't get anything up there except by foot. And they carried, the Koreans with their A-frames, it was the one that carried the ammo up to where you could use it. But they would take one hill and then they'd get set up and take another hill.
So was that the last big battle you were in?
When you're in the mortar, for us it wasn't. It
was always kind of the same.
No size. The infantry one, it was a hell of a battle for them. But for us, we're sitting back there, and one battle was like another to us. We couldn't see whether they had 1,000 Chinese North Koreans or whether they had 100. We just...
They give you a number, you set it up and shoot it.
And they tell you when to fire, and the one thing I do remember about that one, they bought 11 2.5-ton trucks full of ammo for our guns. And the day of the battle, the night before the battle, each gun fired one round every 2 minutes on the enemy's part of the hill. And then in the morning when they took off, we had 9 guns there, and we just fired probably 1,000 rounds for the infantry.
Wow. So you probably had like sore arms from all that activity.
Yeah.
Did you? Does that thing get hot when it fires?
So we only had one. We had one they had to let cool off. One of the rounds got halfway down and it shot up without the shot. It didn't just went up and like a dud. It didn't go fast enough to arm the shell, and they had to let that gun cool off. One time they was moving out, and we was in I was told there was another outfit that was coming up and left there to tell them that that they had moved out and where to go. And they had an artillery barrage, and it was in the middle of this field and no protection at all. And shell after shell come in, you could hear the shrapnel whistling, and I was never so scared in my life. I just got down in a fetal position and hoped that the shrapnel wouldn't hit me.
When was that?
That was just during the fall around Heartbreak Ridge time.
So you were going back to...
The outfit was moving out, and somebody didn't know about it, and I don't know why they couldn't radio him. Anyway, he posted me there to tell these people, that where they was going.
So they had you guys sighted in.
Yeah, they didn't know that we moved out. They had their spies at regimental headquarters, and they knew the house boys that the officers had. They had maps that showed every outfit They knew where every outfit on the front line was. Been there by myself.
So they were shelling it thinking that everybody was still
Thinking
there.
that there was other people there.
That must have been so bizarre.
Yeah.
You're getting like a shell attack just on you.
You could tell they was mortars, because an artillery shell whistle for 5 or 10 seconds before it hits, but a mortar shell, you hear it whistle just before it hits.
So how many would you say that went off there?
Oh, it was probably 30 or 40 rounds.
Jeez. That's the longest half hour of your life?
Wasn't right where I was, but all over they was in different parts of the landscape.
Where were you in the fall of 51? Like what part of Korea were you in?
I would say we was on I believe we was on the East Coast, and we was about, where that took place was about 30 miles from the 38th parallel.
So you were still on the south side of it?
Yeah, I was still on the south side.
Did you ever get to the north?
Yeah, by January we was in
What is now North Korea?
Huh?
What is now North Korea?
Yeah.
So what were you doing from the fall to January?
I don't remember whether...
I mean, was there a big advance forward all the time, or?
Yeah, we just followed the infantry.
And
hero.
Did you feel like you were like taking a bunch of territory forward?
Yeah, but it wasn't. When they would move up and take to another hill, we would move up behind them.
It sounds like from what they're talking about here, like in the fall of 51 with these battles, it wasn't a big advancement. It was just like 100 yards, 200 yards. So it was really tough to move forward, right?
Yeah. They had a lot of enemy, but the biggest one was in. They called the May Massacre. They killed 200,000 Chinese North Koreans in 4 days in offensives all across Korea.
What can you tell me about, like, November, December? What do you remember? Anything you
No, I don't know. There was nothing significant going on after Heartbreak Ridge.
When you guys took a break from the front line, where were you going? You like to the rear?
Yeah, we'd go to the rear.
And what is the rear? What was there?
We'd find a flat area, and they would have tents set up and medical people, and you would get to change your clothes. We slept in pup tents.
What do you remember about the way you felt over there? Were you cold? Were you hot? Were you wet?
No, we had good. We had in the wintertime we had the warmest clothes. We had the boots. We had what do you call them with the liners in them? They never froze. No.
Mm-hmm. So December, tell me about going on R&R. You went on R&R to Tokyo, right?
Yeah, we flew in I think a C-124, and then spent 5 days in Tokyo, and then they didn't do nothing. Stayed in the hotel. In the hotel, I never seen much of. I did go see a movie at near the World Hotel we was seeing.
So from what the situation you had been in to all those lights and buildings must have been quite something, like Las Vegas or something.
Yeah, it was something. The first thing I did was go to the cafeteria and get 3 great big glasses of milk. That was the only thing I missed with milk.
You didn't have milk in the lines?
No, they had powdered milk
Oh.
and sea rations.
So you didn't really do much while you were in
No.
Tokyo? Just
I
rest?
was only 17 years old. So, well, right there, yeah. Yeah, I was 18 then, by the time I went on R&R.
Were you still a virgin?
Yep.
Did that change in Tokyo?
No.
Okay.
I see. Like all the women wore them long.
They're really
kimonos or
conservative,
whatever
right?
They were. And they had some pretty women, but I was, like I said, I was 18, and being 18 and 50 is different than being 18 now.
When did you get back to the States?
In January of '52.
Okay, and then you went to
30 days. It was got 30-day leave, and then I went to Camp Carson, Colorado.
what did you do on your 30-day leave?
Went home.
Went to Michigan
Yeah,
by a train?
yeah.
Was your family happy to see
Oh,
you?
yeah.
Was Richard in somewhere then?
He was in the Navy. I can't remember whether.
But it was like 52, right?
Yeah. Now it's Fort Carson. Then it was Camp Carson.
Is that Colorado Springs?
Yeah.
Had you ever seen the Rocky Mountains before?
Oh no.
That must have been quite
Oh
something.
yeah. Going to flat Detroit to 14,000 feet. That it is something to see.
So what were you doing there?
They first put us in a mule train. We had to make a manual on how to load 120 millimeter mortars, on how many mules it took to take the mortars and the ammunition. It was boring is what it was.
Didn't you tell me that there was somebody who got injured over in Korea and you...
Yeah, he got his leg blown off, and I seen him he was at the hospital in Camp Carson.
You recognized him?
Yeah,
Was
he was in our platoon.
Oh, okay. How big is a platoon?
I think we got about four guns. We got about 45 people each platoon.
Okay.
They wanted me to be a regimental clerk
In Colorado?
in Colorado, and I couldn't. In order to be a clerk, you had to type the soldier of the month, and you had to type a paragraph with his name in it, and you couldn't make any mistakes, no errors. And I never had typing before, and I never did learn how to type right. So they was going to keep me at it, so I volunteered to go back overseas again.
You really didn't like being a clerk that you were willing to go back to combat.
Yeah. Well, they said I didn't have a choice. That they didn't say I would. They said I could, but instead they sent me to Germany.
So when did you get to Germany?
In November of 1952.
And you're in Berlin, right?
Yeah,
Do you remember what division or whatever you were with
it
there?
was a sixth infantry regiment. It wasn't a division.
Okay.
They guarded the Spandau prison was the main thing reason for them being there.
And so there were a lot of big Nazis in there, right?
Yeah, they had the people from the German army that they had prisoners in there. And they was also guarding some of the German scientists to keep, the communists from getting to them.
What were your days like there?
Boring.
What were you doing? Hurry up and wait?
When you was on duty, you was sitting in a little office waiting for somebody to knock on the door, but nobody had never seen anybody. It looked like the World War II had just ended a week ago. When it come to the eastern part, but Berlin itself, you couldn't tell that they was in a war. They had there was no bombed out buildings. Every building was secure.
Was everybody just sort of like back to life, shopping and walking the streets?
The older Germans didn't like us very well, but the younger Germans accepted us pretty good.
What were the women like there? Pretty?
Oh yeah, German women, and they really know how to eat.
What do you remember from eating your food there?
Oh, the bratwurst is the main thing I remember. I love bratwurst.
You were double dating with one of your colleagues, an East German?
He had a girlfriend, and he wanted to have and her girlfriend didn't have anybody, so she wanted her to go with him, so he got me to go with him.
What was her name?
I forgot it.
You
already.
forgot her name. How sad.
I know the one of them I dated was named Gisela Arnst.
Gisela?
But this other girl wasn't. I only went out twice, and there was no third time because her parents they were from Eastern Germany, and her parents was high-ranking communists, and they wouldn't let her date an American.
And she sent you like a really tearful letter about that, right?
Yeah, I got a letter from her.
Heartbreaker. So how long were you in Germany?
2 years.
2 years of that boring kind of routine, huh?
Oh, there was nothing boring about Berlin.
What were you doing? What was the nightlife like? You going out drinking or?
Oh, we went out to bars a couple times a week. You couldn't, on a PFC pay, you couldn't do very much.
Were you much of a dancer back then? Were you dancing?
I never went dancing. They went to bars, but I never went to any social clubs or anything.
So do you remember that as one of your better times in your time in the military when you were in Germany?
I loved Berlin.
Okay, so when did you get done there?
Well, when I was due to muster out of the Army in September of '54.
When did you decide to re-up?
In '56, February '56.
What were you doing in between?
Wasn't doing much of anything. Went from job to job, and
Why did you decide to re-up?
because I liked it when the first time I was there, so I didn't have to take. I went to Fort Gordon for MP training.
When?
Right after I got over there. If I went in,
56?
yeah, I don't remember what month it was, but they sent me right to Fort Gordon to military police school.
How long did that last?
It took about 3 months, and then they shipped us to Korea again. I was a truck driver the second time. It's called the Rock Pile. It was a top secret Air Force base at that time, but right now it wouldn't be top secret anymore. I think it was radio fingerprinting. They listened to radio conversations all the way around the world, and they had bunkers with equipment in them that they would go out. The Air Force would go out every once in a while and go in there and do whatever they needed to do.
And you were just guarding this place.
No, we just guarded it.
And of course, the war was over, so guarding it was just kind of standing around, right?
Well, it was a top secret, so any
spies or anything,
any military or civilian place is top secret is guarded.
How long were you there doing that?
It was there 2 years.
How many people were there? Like support
we
people?
just had one platoon and then the Air Force people. It wasn't daily. They'd drive anytime they needed supplies. They'd drive down to Seoul and pick up supplies and then come back.
So you got to know some Korean people better in this time, right? What were they? What would you say about the Korean people?
The Koreans at that time were pretty friendly, most of them.
You were telling me the story about a guy that wanted you to come and have a drink in his home neighborhood, and you had to leave the truck.
He was a barber at our compound, and his day off was the day that I would go in and pick up groceries. And he lived in a little village on the way between our compound and Seoul.
And he said, "Come see me."
And I told him the first time, and they went there about 4 or 5 times. I told them the first time, well, we can't leave this truck here because it's loaded with supplies, and the Korean people aren't that affluent. Food is hard to come by. And he said, you don't have to worry. There won't be one thing touched on that truck.
And then you would go and check and nothing was taken.
Yeah, and then we went back to...
And what would have happened to you if they would have found out you did that?
Oh, they probably got court-martialed.
Was this around the time that you got looped into a movie?
Yeah, that was when I was driving the truck. They used the truck in the movie.
Was she like a movie star?
I guess she was a Korean movie star, but I don't know what the plot of the movie was.
It would be interesting if we could...
that was only a short part of the movie.
When did you get out then?
At 58, I got sent to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and I was at Fort Sill about 3 months. I was a truck driver there too. We drove the 155 millimeter artillery. They had, for every base you go to on Saturday morning, you were in a parade. Spit and polish I was lousy at. Out in the field I loved it.
So when you think back on your time in Korea, what do you think about?
And which one, the war or after the war?
Either one, both.
I was just glad to come out of it alive.
I mean, did you feel like what were your thoughts about fighting for America's freedom and all that? Or was that really what your motivation was?
You don't think you're just there and hope you can make it back. The rifleman is the heroes of any war. Everybody else is there to help them do their job. That takes more guts than anything to move up a hill with an M1 and there's 1,000 Chinese up there, but yet you keep going until you get to the top.
North Korea and South Korea are still divided. Was it like the war was a big waste of time? Yeah. What do you think about that?
I don't know why they never settled everything, but North Korea is still a danger of starting another war.
I mean, you got to feel good about the life you've created for the South Korean people, right?
But if they had another one, if China gets in it, It's going to be one hell of a massacre.
All right, well, thank you for your service.